The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with whispers as Ambassador Kang smoothed her formal diplomatic uniform and approached the speaking platform. This was humanity's moment. Their first official petition to join the interstellar community after decades of careful observation and limited contact. The massive hall curved upward in concentric rings, each filled with representatives from over 200 spacefaring civilizations. Some appeared almost human-like, while others defied Earth's biological understanding. Crystalline entities, vapor beings contained in specialized suits, and massive, tentacled creatures in gravity tanks. Kang stood tall, despite being dwarfed, by the grand chamber. Her eyes remained steady, showing none of the awe she felt. Behind her calm expression lay the mind of someone who had once commanded Earth's most elite strategic operations division before transitioning to diplomacy. "Esteemed Council," she began, her voice clear and measured. "Earth comes before you not as conquerors or supplicants, but as equals seeking mutual cooperation and knowledge exchange. We may be newcomers to the stars, but our species brings unique perspectives that could benefit all." She presented Earth's case methodically, their rapid technological advancement, cultural richness, and diplomatic achievements in unifying a once fractured planet. The holographic displays showed Earth's wonders, scientific breakthroughs, and humanitarian triumphs. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then came something unexpected: laughter. It started with the Talon High Counselor, a tall, silver-skinned being whose elaborate headdress marked his ancient lineage. "How charmingly primitive," he said, his universal translator not hiding the dismissive tone. "The primate species believes 50 years of spaceflight qualifies them for council representation." More laughter rippled through the chamber as Kang stood motionless, her expression unchanged, though her knuckles whitened slightly where they gripped the podium. The Talon continued, rising from his seat. "Humans are barely out of their gravity well. Their emotional unpredictability alone makes them unsuitable for council matters. We've observed your kind for centuries, your wars, your environmental negligence, your irrational decision-making. The Kier Morta representative, a being with 4 arms and eyes that shifted color with mood, joined in. Their application shows remarkable arrogance. They haven't even mastered basic gravitational manipulation, yet they presume to sit among species who were crossing the void, while their ancestors were discovering fire." Kang listened, as one by one, the senior council members dismantled humanity's application with increasing derision. They questioned human intelligence, mocked Earth's technological achievements as quaint imitations of proper science, and suggested humans might be better suited as servants rather than equals. "Perhaps in another millennium," the Talon concluded, with a wave of his long-fingered hand. "The Council formally denies Earth's petition for membership. We recommend minimal contact with humans until they evolve beyond their aggressive and emotional limitations." The vote was unanimous. Hundreds of representatives signaled their agreement by illuminating their stations with red light. Not a single ally stood with Earth. Kang bowed respectfully, her face a perfect mask of diplomatic acceptance. "The Council's wisdom is noted," she said simply. "Earth thanks you for your consideration." As she turned to leave, the Talon called after her. "You handle rejection well, Ambassador. Perhaps your species is capable of learning after all." Kang paused but didn't turn back. "We humans have much experience with both rejection and learning, High Counselor. It's how we've survived on a world that tried to kill us daily." She walked with measured steps across the vast chamber floor, past the representatives who had just humiliated her world. Her mind, once responsible for outthinking Earth's most dangerous military powers during the last war, was already racing, calculating, planning, seeing connections and vulnerabilities others would miss. The Council had made a fundamental error. They had studied human history, technology, and biology, but they had failed to understand human psychology. They had mistaken diplomatic patience for weakness, technological development timelines for intelligence, and most critically, they had publicly shamed someone whose military genius had once brought nations to their knees without firing a shot. The great doors of the council chamber closed behind her. Ambassador Kang's diplomatic smile faded. In its place came an expression her former military colleagues would have recognized immediately, the look of a strategist who had just identified her opponent's fatal weakness. The council had revealed everything she needed to know. They were complacent, arrogant, and they had gravely underestimated humanity. Kang touched the communication device on her wrist. Send message to Special Director Park. Authorization Omega-73. Message begins. Initiate protocol underestimated. The garden needs weeding. The council's mistake wasn't just insulting a human. They had insulted precisely the wrong human. Kang's shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, the curve of the blue planet filling the viewport as she prepared for questions that would inevitably come. How would she explain humanity's rejection? To the United Earth government? The craft landed with barely a sound on the Geneva landing pad, where a small committee waited. Ambassador, greeted Director Han of Interstellar Relations, his expression already showing he expected bad news. The council's decision? Exactly as we anticipated, Kang replied, her voice betraying nothing of her internal fire. Complete rejection. They called us primitive primates, emotionally unstable, and suggested we might make suitable servants in another 1,000 years. The committee members exchanged glances, concern, anger, disappointment, but Kang raised her hand slightly. We will issue a public statement accepting their decision with grace and understanding, she said as they walked toward the government complex. We'll emphasize continued peaceful trade relations and cultural exchange where permitted. Director Han looked puzzled. You don't seem particularly troubled by this setback. A small smile touched Kang's lips. The council made their position very clear. Now we make ours clear, just not to them. Later that evening, in a secured underground facility beneath the Urals, Kang sat at the head of a table surrounded by faces few people on Earth would recognize. Dr. Park, whose nanotechnology innovations had revolutionized medicine, but whose military applications remained classified. Colonel Lee, whose tactical brilliance during the resource wars had earned him the nickname, the Ghost. Commander Joe, who had built Earth's hidden defense network. And 5 others. Scientists, strategists, and intelligence experts who had worked in the shadows while diplomats took the spotlight. The council rejected us unanimously, Kang explained, activating a holographic display of the Galactic Council chamber. But they revealed far more than they intended. She pointed to specific council members, highlighting their reactions, their body language, their positioning. The Talon control through fear and tradition. The Morda through technological superiority, which is mostly smoke and mirrors. And here, she indicated a group of smaller representatives nearly hidden in shadow. These species aren't allies. They're subjects, barely hiding their resentment. Dr. Park leaned forward. You're suggesting the council isn't as unified as they appear? I'm suggesting the council is a house of cards, Kang replied. They've grown complacent. They believe their technological advantage makes them untouchable, but they've forgotten what it means to fight for survival. She stood, pacing slowly around the table. We've spent decades studying their technology, their biology, their psychology, their communication systems. We've sent probes to worlds they don't even monitor. We've intercepted transmissions they consider secure. Colonel Lee nodded. Protocol underestimated. You really want to activate it? They see us as primitive primates, Kang said, her voice hardening. So let's show them what primates can do. Not with ships or weapons or anything they'd recognize as a threat. She activated another display showing a map of known Galactic Council territories. We don't need to defeat them militarily. We just need to apply pressure to the right points. For the next 6 hours, they refined the plan. Earth would maintain its public face, disappointed but accepting, continuing limited trade with approved alien species, seemingly focused on its own solar system development. Meanwhile, small teams would be deployed on specialized missions across Council space. Dr. Park's team would adapt their nanotechnology to infiltrate alien communication systems, not to destroy but to listen, and when the time came to distribute information, Colonel Lee would identify pressure points in the galactic power structure, which species harbored resentments, which planets chafed under council rule, which trade routes were vulnerable to disruption. Remember, Kang emphasized as dawn approached, this isn't about revenge or warfare, it's about leverage. The council thinks we're too emotional and unpredictable to join them? We'll show them precisely how calculating humans can be. In the weeks that followed, Earth seemed to return to business as usual. News outlets reported the rejection as disappointing but unsurprising. Politicians spoke of focusing on solar system development instead. Trade continued with the few alien species permitted to do business with Earth. But deep in secure laboratories, Dr. Park's nanites evolved daily, learning to navigate alien systems undetected. In hidden training facilities, special operatives studied alien languages and customs with new intensity. And in orbit, seemingly ordinary cargo vessels underwent subtle modifications before departing for deep space. 3 months after the rejection, Kang traveled to Luna Base to watch the launch of the Stellar Horizon, officially a scientific research vessel bound for the outer solar system. Unofficially, it carried 20 of Earth's most capable operatives and enough of Dr. Park's specialized technology to change the course of galactic politics. I still think this is risky, Director Han said, standing beside her at the viewport. If the Council discovers what we're doing, they won't, Kang replied, watching as the ship's engines flared to life. They expect us to react emotionally, to protest loudly or retreat into isolation. They've never understood humanity's greatest strength. Which is? Adaptation, she said simply. For millions of years, we weren't the strongest or fastest species on our planet. We survived because we learned, we planned, we cooperated, and when necessary, we fought with everything we had. The stellar horizon accelerated away from Luna, soon just a bright point among the stars. The Council made their choice, Kang said softly. Now they'll learn what happens when you corner a species that evolved as both predator and prey. 6 months passed with no unusual activity reported across Council space. The Talon had already forgotten about Earth's rejection, just another primitive species put in its place, one of dozens they'd dismissed over the centuries. Life continued in the great galactic civilization. Planets spun, trade flowed, and the Council maintained its grip on 1,000 worlds. Until Nara went silent. Nara wasn't a particularly important world, a mid-sized Talon colony with a population of roughly 3 million, primarily functioning as a communications hub for that sector. The first sign of trouble came when scheduled data packets failed to arrive at the central Talon network. Technical glitches happened occasionally, so controllers simply rerouted communications and sent a standard maintenance alert. When no response came after 24 hours, they dispatched a small investigation team. Standard procedure. The team never reported back. In the Council's Emergency Response Center, Supervisor Lix stared at the display showing Nara's status. Still nothing from the investigation team? His assistant shook his head. No response to any signals. Automated satellites show the city still standing, no signs of attack or natural disaster. But all quantum communication nodes are offline. Send a security cruiser, Lix ordered. Full complement. 3 days later, the cruiser Unwavering Order entered Nara's orbit. Captain Vell's voice came through clearly on the emergency channel, sounding confused. We've landed at the capital spaceport. There's nobody here. No signs of violence, no bodies, nothing. The cities are empty. Power systems running on automation. It's like everyone just left. That's impossible, Lix snapped. 3 million people don't just disappear. Check the residential sectors. Hours passed as the security teams methodically searched the colony's major cities. Their reports all echoed the first. No colonists, no signs of struggle, personal belongings left behind as if the population had simply walked away from their lives. But one detail caught Supervisor Lix's attention. In the governor's office, the security team found a single object out of place. A small earth flower called a dandelion, its white seeds scattered across the governor's desk. Probably nothing, the team leader reported. Might have been brought in by the governor as a curiosity. These humans have been trading their biological specimens in some sectors. Lix wasn't so sure. He remembered the colony governor had been one of the vocal critics during Earth's council hearing. Before the council could fully process what happened on Nara, reports came in of another world going silent. Voros, a Morta research outpost. Then a Talon military academy planet named Kelth. Then Zindar, home to the council's western sector administration. Each time the pattern was identical. Communications suddenly ceased, investigation teams disappeared, and when larger forces arrived, they found abandoned worlds with no sign of what happened to the inhabitants. And at each location, some small Earth artifact was found prominently displayed in a government building. A paper book, a chess piece, a violin string. In the council's great chamber, emergency sessions ran continuously. The Talon High Counselors, Silver Skin had dulled with stress as he addressed the gathered representatives. 4 worlds silent in under 2 weeks. No pattern to their locations, no common factor except they all played prominent roles in rejecting Earth's application, finished the Morta representative, her eye colors shifting nervously between yellow and red. This cannot be coincidence. Whispers filled the chamber. Some demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others pointed out the impossibility of humans being responsible. Earth possessed only short-range vessels, nothing that could reach these distant worlds undetected. Besides, human technology was primitive by council standards. The debates raged while elsewhere in the galaxy, Dr. Park sat in the camouflaged Earth vessel, Quiet Thunder, monitoring streams of data. The ship floated in deep space, far from established trade routes, its experimental stealth systems making it virtually invisible to council detection. Nara's population successfully relocated, she noted, checking off another item on her display. No casualties. The memory adjustment should wear off in about 3 months once they're settled in their new homes. Colonel Lee nodded, studying star charts showing the location of each fallen planet. The Council's military is scrambling. They've diverted 16 battlecruisers from their normal patrols to guard their core worlds. Exactly as predicted. And the information packages? Dr. Park asked. Deployed and waiting for activation. When the nanites trigger, every citizen on those planets will simultaneously receive proof of the Council's corruption. Tax records showing how colonial resources have been stripped to benefit the core worlds. Secret directives authorizing genetic experimentation on lesser species. Military orders to eliminate populations that resist. Meanwhile, on a trading outpost near the galactic core, 2 human merchants closed a routine deal with a reptilian trader. Nothing unusual about these humans. They'd been registered traders for years, dealing in simple Earth goods like coffee and textiles. They laughed, shared drinks with their alien counterparts, and complained about rising fuel costs. Just everyday merchants trying to make a living. No one noticed when one of them brushed against a public data terminal, the nanites on his fingertips transferring to the system. No one saw the microscopic machines multiply and spread through the station's communication array, patiently waiting for activation signals. Back in Earth's solar system, everything appeared normal. Construction continued on the Mars colony. The Jupiter mining stations reported record outputs. Diplomatic channels remained open with the few alien species permitted to communicate with humans. No unusual military activity was detected. No fleet was assembled. No weapons were aimed at Council space. In her office in Geneva, Ambassador Kang received the latest reports from her operatives. 5 more planets were already targeted for liberation. The stolen Council access codes were working perfectly. The nanite information packages were spreading undetected through the galactic network. She poured herself a cup of tea and watched a satellite feed of Earth from orbit. Blue oceans, white clouds, the lights of cities on the night side. The home planet humans had nearly destroyed multiple times but always managed to save. "You should have just let us join," she murmured, though there was no one to hear. "We only wanted to be partners." She activated her secure communication channel. "Proceed to Phase 2, she said simply. The first dominoes had fallen perfectly. Now it was time to push over a few more. Panic gripped the Galactic Council as reports flooded in of more worlds going dark. 12 planets now, all abandoned. all without explanation. Military vessels patrolled major systems but found nothing suspicious. Trade routes were disrupted as merchants feared their destinations might suddenly empty of customers. Council representatives demanded answers, protection, action. The Talon High Counselor's chambers had become a war room. Maps displayed affected, worlds glowing red against the backdrop of council space. No pattern, no logic to their selection. Some were military outposts, others civilian colonies. Some resource-rich, others barely sustainable. The only common factor remained their involvement in Earth's rejection 6 months earlier. "We have no choice," the High Counselor said, his voice raspy from lack of sleep. "Summon the human ambassador." The emergency message reached Earth on a priority channel. Ambassador Kang received it while working in her garden, a small, peaceful space outside her Geneva residence. She carefully cleaned the soil from her hands before accepting the transmission. The Talon messenger appeared unusually subdued. "Ambassador Kang, your presence is requested before the full council. A vessel will arrive within your solar system in 12 hours to transport you. May I ask the purpose of this sudden invitation?" Kang's tone remained perfectly pleasant. "The High Counselor will discuss that upon your arrival." The transmission ended abruptly. 12 hours later, Kang boarded the Talon diplomatic vessel. She traveled alone, bringing only a small case containing what appeared to be official documents. The journey to the Council homeworld took 3 days, during which 3 more planets went silent. The Council chamber felt different now. Where once it had buzzed with casual confidence and superiority, now tension filled the air. Many seats stood empty, representatives of affected worlds or those too frightened to attend. Armed guards lined the walls, watching the lone human with suspicious eyes. The High Counselor did not waste time on formalities. "Ambassador Kang, planets across Council space are experiencing an unprecedented crisis. We have reason to believe Earth is involved." Kang raised an eyebrow. "That's quite an accusation, High Counselor. Earth possesses neither the technology nor the military capacity to affect worlds so far from our system. As you pointed out during our application hearing, we are barely out of our gravity well. Yet these incidents began shortly after your rejection," the Morta representative interrupted, her eyes flashing dangerous reds and oranges. "And each affected world played some role in denying your application." Kang looked thoughtful. "A concerning coincidence, certainly. Perhaps we should examine what's actually happening to these worlds." "We know what's happening," shouted a representative from the back. "Entire populations vanishing without explanation, military vessels disappearing, communication networks disabled. Is that what you know?" Kang asked quietly. The chamber fell silent as she opened her case and removed a small device. "May I?" Before anyone could object, she activated it. A holographic display appeared above the council floor, showing hundreds of thousands of people, the supposedly missing populations, living in newly established settlements on previously uninhabited worlds. "Your missing citizens haven't vanished," Kang explained. "They've relocated, voluntarily I might add, after learning certain truths about how the Council operates." She tapped the device again. New images appeared, internal Council documents, financial records, military directives. These were discovered in your own databases. Records of how Council worlds have been systematically exploiting younger civilizations. How primitive species are manipulated for resources. How populations that resist are quietly eliminated. The High Counselor's silver skin paled further. "These are classified documents. How did you—" "We didn't need to steal them," Kang interrupted. "Your own systems freely shared them once we asked the right questions. You see, when you dismissed humans as emotional and unpredictable, you failed to recognize our greatest strength, our curiosity. For years we've been inserting ourselves into your information networks, learning how they function, identifying their vulnerabilities." She gestured to the holographic display, now showing the nanite information packages spreading through Council systems. "We didn't attack anyone. We simply revealed the truth to people who deserve to know." The citizens of Nara learned their world's resources were being harvested to support luxury lifestyles on Talon core worlds. The military cadets on Kelth discovered they were being trained not for defense, but for suppression of lesser species. People made their own choices after that. Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives began to understand. Some looked horrified, others guilty. A few nodded in grim satisfaction. "This is the action of terrorists," the High Counselor declared, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Kang replied firmly. "This is the action of the suppressed finding their voice. You call it terrorism when the truth threatens your power. We call it liberation." She addressed the entire chamber now. "Earth didn't make planets fall. We simply provided facts, your facts, to your own people. The systems are falling because they were built on lies and exploitation." A representative from a smaller world stood up. "She speaks the truth. My people have suffered under Talon extraction policies for generations. We've been denied council representation while our resources fuel your economies." Others joined in, voices growing louder as centuries of resentment finally found expression. Kang watched as the council fractured before her eyes. Not with violence, not with warfare, but with truth. This was what Colonel Lee had identified as the council's critical vulnerability, not their defenses or weapons, but the fragile foundation of their authority. "What do you want?" the High Counselor finally asked, his voice barely audible above the chaos. "The same thing we wanted 6 months ago," Kang replied. "Partnership, equality, a galactic community based on mutual respect rather than domination, and control." She revealed one final piece of information: the location of all 15 fallen planets' populations, thriving in new settlements beyond council control. They're building a different kind of community, one that welcomes all species as equals. Earth didn't take your planets. Your own people chose to leave. As the council chamber erupted in argument and recrimination, Kang stood watching the collapse of an empire that had lasted 10,000 years. Not through humanity's superior weapons or technology, but through the power of information and the universal desire for freedom. The council had mistaken diplomatic patience for weakness. They had insulted a species that had survived on a world that demanded adaptation and innovation. Most fatally, they had assumed technological superiority equaled strategic superiority. Now, planets were indeed falling away from oppression toward something new. The Great Council Chamber, once the unquestioned center of galactic power, had transformed in the weeks following Ambassador Kang's revelation. Where ornate thrones had once elevated the Talon and their closest allies above all others, now a circular table dominated the space. A simple design suggested by human architects, where all representatives sat at equal height. The transition hadn't been entirely peaceful. Several Talon military commanders had attempted a show of force against the rebelling worlds, only to discover their command codes mysteriously failing and their crews refusing orders. The Morta Trading Consortium had tried economic sanctions, but their financial networks experienced unexplained glitches that redistributed wealth to formerly exploited worlds. Not a single shot had been fired. Not one life had been lost. The revolution happened in whispers of truth, in the quiet revelation of long-hidden facts. Today would mark the first session of what many were calling the New Council. Representatives from over 300 worlds filled the chamber. The original council members plus dozens of species previously deemed insufficiently advanced for participation. The atmosphere hummed with nervous energy and cautious hope. Kang entered without ceremony, dressed in a simple blue uniform rather than diplomatic finery. She had spent the last 3 weeks shuttling between faction leaders, mediating disputes, and helping draft the framework for a new galactic governing system. The exhaustion showed in the shadows beneath her eyes, but her step remained steady as she took her place at the table. The former High Counselor of the Tylon, now simply Representative Sill, looked diminished without his elaborate regalia. His silver skin had lost its luster, yet he carried himself with what dignity remained. He was the first to speak. 6 months ago, he began, his voice echoing in the hushed chamber. I stood in this room and declared humans too primitive and emotional. for council membership. Today I stand corrected by events I never imagined possible. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Such an admission from a Talon was unprecedented. The humans could have destroyed us, Syl continued. They had access to our most critical systems, our military networks, our resource distribution chains. Yet they chose to reveal truth rather than wreak destruction. They chose liberation over conquest. He turned to Kang. I still don't understand why. Kang allowed herself a small smile. Because destruction is easy. Building something better is the real challenge. Earth has learned that lesson through blood and fire over thousands of years. She stood, addressing the gathered representatives. What you're witnessing isn't Earth's victory over the Council. It's the victory of cooperation over domination. The old Council fell not because of human actions, but because its foundation was flawed. No system built on secrets and exploitation can stand forever. A representative from one of the fallen planets, now thriving free colonies, stepped forward. When we learned how the Council had manipulated our development for centuries, harvesting our resources while keeping us dependent, many wanted revenge. But the humans showed us another path. He gestured around the chamber. Look at what we've accomplished in mere weeks. Former enemies working together. Resources being shared rather than hoarded. Knowledge flowing freely between worlds. The achievements were indeed remarkable. Once the Council's stranglehold on advanced technology had broken, innovation flourished across formerly restricted worlds. Environmental damage from exploitative mining practices was being reversed. Species previously pitted against each other as competitors had discovered complementary strengths. This is only the beginning, Kang said. Imagine what we can build together over years, over centuries. Representative Syl seemed troubled. I still fail to understand your species, Ambassador Kang. You orchestrated the collapse of a system that stood for 10 millennia, yet you seek no special power or privilege in its replacement. That's because you're still thinking in terms of winners and losers, Kang replied. Earth doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it, learn from it, contribute to it. True strength isn't about domination. It's about creating connections that make everyone stronger. A voting session followed, establishing the foundational principles of the new council. Equal representation, transparent governance, protection. For developing worlds, open exchange of scientific knowledge with safeguards against weaponization. The measures passed with overwhelming support. As the session concluded, representatives gathered in smaller groups, building personal connections that would strengthen the formal alliances. Kang found herself approached by a young Talon, a rarity, as their species rarely left their homeworlds. My name is Ven, he said. I've been studying human history since the Revelation. Your species has survived catastrophes that would have extinguished most civilizations, climate disasters, nuclear brinkmanship, resource wars. Yet you always rebuilt, always adapted. Kang nodded. That's the paradox the old council never understood. Our emotional nature and our difficult history are precisely what make humans valuable partners. We've faced extinction enough times to recognize what truly matters. Later, as stars appeared in the viewing dome above the chamber, Kang stood with Colonel Lee and Dr. Park, watching representatives from 100 worlds conversing, sharing ideas, building the foundation of something unprecedented. Protocol underestimated worked better than we anticipated, Lee observed. I expected more resistance. People everywhere want the same basic things, Kang replied. Dignity, security, purpose. The Council denied those things to too many for too long. Dr. Park studied her handheld monitor. The last of the nanite networks have self-dissolved as programmed. All borrowed access codes have been purged from our systems. We've kept our promise. No backdoors, no hidden advantages. We don't need advantages, Kang said, watching the diverse gathering with satisfaction. We need partners. As the three humans looked out over the birth of a new galactic order, Kang thought about Earth, the blue world that had forced humanity to become adaptable, innovative, and resilient. the planet that had nearly killed them countless times, teaching harsh lessons about cooperation and foresight. The Council's fatal mistake hadn't been insulting a human. It had been underestimating humanity's greatest strength, not their technology or their military capacity, but their hard-won understanding that true power comes from lifting others up rather than holding them down. Planets had indeed fallen, not to conquest, but to possibility, and from their fall something far more beautiful was rising.